Snooping in the neighborhood, talking trash, driving for good, serving up for that latest shit. It's NDKC Hot Dish.
Alrighty, everybody. Welcome back to the Hot Dish. We are here for the first episode of the year. Whoop, whoop. And we are going to talk about sex positivity. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So lock the kids away in the closet. Their bedrooms. And go grab you a nice iced tea or whatever you want to drink. And let's talk about this. Okay. I am your host, Nita. I'm glad to be back with you all today. We have JD, Kat, Tanith, Stacy with us. And we have a special guest. A guest that knows all about sex positivity is going to get you guys all good and warmed up. Welcome, Kristen from Open the Doors Coaching. Kristen.
Thanks for having me.
Woohoo. Hi, how are you?
I'm fantastic. I'm so glad to have some better weather lately. My God, I don't know about you all, but I had to get outside the other day when it was in the 60s and even 70s the other day. Doing much better lately.
Oh, yeah. I think we all are feeling much better this nice weather. I hope it continues on this streak as well. But Kristen, can you please tell us all more about Open the Doors Coaching and how you got on this path of coaching?
Yeah, absolutely. So I used to be a weight loss coach. And when you're helping people with that, let me tell you, a lot of talk about body image and relationships and how people are feeling just not so good comes up. And that was a lot more fun to talk about than helping people follow a diet. And I kind of got out of that for a while. I just got burned out with the corporate world, went to renewable energy, and then was just totally disillusioned with some changes post 2016. Realized I needed to start something for myself where I wasn't beholden to other people and their vision of the future. So, and something that always stuck with me when I was a weight loss coach was that my name tag said, "We change lives." And I was listening to this podcast from a sex coach on one of my business trips. And I was like, this is what I should be doing with my life. So in 2017, I started Open the Doors Coaching. I work with couples and singles. I work with mostly people in their 30s to 50s. Doesn't matter if you are post-divorce, never been married, in the middle of a great relationship, you just want to be better, or a relationship that's maybe not doing so good and you don't really know how to move forward. I help people kind of get unstuck and learn new things. A lot of times it's about giving people permission for trying new things by themselves or with each other. But yeah, I say a coaching approach is really more about helping you figure out where are you right now and where do you want to be? And I help you get there. It's not so much about digging into the past and understanding that stuff. That stuff's great, but it's for therapy. Coaching is more forward focused. And I just get to talk about really, really fun stuff as a certified sex coach and clinical sexologist.
That is amazing. Thank you so much, Kristen. And I know you and I had a conversation about a week ago, and your approach to that, again, saying that it's about focusing on where you are now and where you're going forward, that really inspired me. I just like, yes, because it's so easy to get stuck in the past, but you are here in the present, and let's work on that right now. So that good kudos to you. And we're going to get your advice on some things at the end of the show because you're the expert. You're the expert.
Great.
Here.
I love it. Yes. I'm here.
All righty. Everybody else, how's everybody else doing? JD, Tanith, Stacy, Kat?
Got a drink. I'm doing well.
In a mug, which is always the way to do
Is it weird that I got so excited for 60 degrees that I busted out the Birkenstocks early just because I was like, yes, wow, any little bit of heat, I'm going to bust out my sandals for any excuse.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. Anybody been out walking, running, exercising outside, anything?
I wish I was that good about treating.
Yeah, I thought about it. If that counts, I thought my mind was in a good place, but my body did not follow through. But it's okay.
I sat and watched the sunrise today, so that was nice.
Yeah. Is it a full moon, Tanith? Do you know if is it a full moon? I walked out there around.
Very close. It's the full moon, peak full moon in 2 days.
on the
Okay.
27th. It's the snow moon. It's I believe it's in Pisces. Venus is in Pisces, so it's sexy time already,
Oh.
according to the stars. So everybody's kind of feeling it. I had a friend today go, "Why am I so horny? I don't understand." I'm like, "Girl, Venus in Pisces." Like,
Venus and Pisces.
like,
Okay.
too bad for you, but great for everyone else.
All right. This is your chance. Everybody get freaky dicky out there. Okay. Now go live your life, pleasure, all of that. And we are going to get into all of that. Okay. But let's start. We're talking about sex positivity here. We're having just some open dialogue about what that is and what that looks like and all those good stuff that's related to it. But the first thing is first, what is sex positivity? How do we describe that to someone that just thinks, oh, well, it's just a bunch of people having sex, that's what it's all about? How do you describe sex positivity? Anybody?
I for one think that it's not necessarily about normalizing things. It's often about destigmatizing things. And it's about being comfortable with what you like, but also being comfortable with other people aren't necessarily into that. And that's okay. A little bit of to each their own, as long as it's consensual. And it isn't just about getting out and having all the sex with all the people, all the things. Maybe being sex positive for you is choosing not to have sex. Mm-hmm. For our asexual brothers and sisters and fam out there, you know, their sex positivity looks very different than mine or yours or Stacy's. So,
Yeah, I have no idea. I don't have a definition. That's why I'm here today. Because I'm sure there's lots of people out there similar to me, like, you know, my Irish Catholic peeps, like repression. Do you have a body?
Catholic guilt.
Yeah.
Classic.
It's a very late learner. So.
There's no wrong with that. You know what, Stacey, though, that's kind of where I'm at. Like with this, you know, and when we were having our meeting, I expressed some hesitation about, you know, wanting to host this because I'm like, well, you know, I like talking, you know, the dirty stuff with my friends and everything, but talking about it in front of hundreds of people is a whole other ball game. But I also had to really, you know, ask myself some questions. And I was like, but, you know, I could definitely feel that, you know, that stigma that, you know, like I grew up in a religious home as well, family, and it was unladylike to, you know, talk about sex and be open about your sexuality and all of that. Women didn't do that kind of thing, right? And so even though I consider myself someone that steps away from tradition, that still follows me, you know, because I was in 20 plus years raised in that kind of mindset. So I'm learning here with you all as well. I did some research a couple of days ago and, you know, just kind of refreshing my memory of, you know, what's the definition of sex positivity? And I was like, well, you know, I definitely have been practicing sex positivity in the past couple of years, but I'm still not in a level of being completely comfortable with it. It is a process. So I'm there too. I'm asking questions, trying to feel everyone else out about what's going on and what's it about.
Good. And that's what it's all about, right?
Yeah. Kat, Tanif, JD, you guys still with us?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, my view of what I see sex positivity, your definitions are also correct, but I see it more as a dialogue of intimacy, not only with others, but sometimes the most important intimacy is with yourself and being comfortable with who you are. It's discovering yourself. Sometimes sex shows a lot more about your personality and how you interact with others than just, you know, getting down and dirty. Sometimes it's just the relationship between you and like a stranger, and even sometimes with your family, because sometimes trauma with sex sometimes goes hand in hand with family trauma. You know? It's kind of scary, like relationships just intertwine and not just in like an intimate way with like in romance, but in family and friends.
So valid.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying so valid. Yeah.
I have a question. So that brings, Kat, that's kind of how I've been feeling too. Like I've been on this journey of with my sex positivity. It's been more me focused, and I haven't even touched the me is me now, that's healed, that's been healing and growing. This version of me hasn't had a chance to interact with someone else and experiment with my sexuality with someone else. So would you say that or anyone that can answer this, that your sexuality with yourself is more important, or with how you express that with someone else, or is it both equal?
I guess that depends on what part of the journey you're wanting to search for first. I would say when I was discovering my sex positivity, it was really starting off with trying to understand relationships with others. And then as I got older and I'm like, okay, well, relationships with others is fine, but I'm focusing too much on others and not too much on myself. Like, especially in quarantine, I really went back through all the relationships that I went through. And I'm like, okay, what are the good things that I liked about relationships and what are the bad? And where should I value myself here? And where did I just, let things slide too much and I wasn't comfortable in it? And, how would I have known that if I never even went through sex? And some people are like, no, I need to discover myself and figure out how I'm comfortable with my body. Like, I was talking with somebody online recently with COVID, you can only really have limited ways of dating. And this person hasn't had much experience in sex, but they were like, I only had sex 2 times in my life, but I felt like I needed to discover myself more before I even go back into dating or even anything with sex, because having sex was just too much. And they were like, you know what? I think I need to evaluate what I'm comfortable with before I go back in.
Yeah, I think sometimes as a society, my Aquarius is showing, we put a lot of emphasis on the act of sex, but not what it means to connect emotionally, physically, mentally, all the metaphors you can insert here with another person. And Kat, during quarantine, I've really connected with myself through solo sex and exploring what I enjoy, what I feel. So we see sex as something that happens between 2 or more people, when really you can have solo sex, masturbation, if you will. You can explore yourselves and see what kind of sensations you like, how much pressure do you enjoy, do you like something more gentle, do you like something more rough, and then you can really hammer home what you like and how to articulate that to another person. Because when you're just thrown into sex with another person without knowing what feels good or how to even communicate what feels good or even what feels bad, you just end up in this kind of meh, it wasn't good, it wasn't bad, it's just kind of, it was there sort of situation. And I think by just exploring yourself, even if you're asexual, just exploring hey, this is how I feel about it, this is how I can communicate about it, I don't enjoy this thing because insert reasons here, really helps you connect just on a very human level. It's not just about sex at this point. It's just about here's me establishing my boundaries, here's me respecting yours, and let's come to a really great compromise in the middle where we both have a really good time.
Yes, I love all of that so much. And one of the biggest disservices of sex education is they don't teach us about masturbation and self-pleasure and solo sex. They don't teach us that, like you say, that the most important relationship you have is the one with yourself, and understanding your boundaries, your likes and dislikes, your hard fuck no's, as well as your enthusiastic yeses. I think it's a balance. That it's really preparing for a marathon. You don't just get out and run a marathon. You walk and you run, you walk and you run. So maybe for people, it can be like that, where yes, sometimes it's about partnered pleasure. And then other times that discovery is about solo pleasure. I don't think it has to be that you've got to wait to get out there and experience, all the flavors of the rainbow. But there's something to be said about understanding some fundamental things about yourself before you get out there and try all of the things. Go into it informed, go into it having some gist, and go into it with other people with trust and things like that. And I think you touched on something so important there, Tana, that like one thing I try to teach people is that your sex life is yours. Like, even if you're in a partnership, you are one person, they are another. You each have your own sex lives. And sometimes that's apart and sometimes that's together. But you are a unique sexual creature. So when you talk about your sex life, that's about you, not about anything in partnership.
Excellent. Excellent. To all you.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sorry, JD, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I really relate to the idea of sex positivity looking like actually stepping away from sex to reevaluate things, because I'm another one here who grew up religious. I grew up primarily in white majority independent and Southern Baptist churches. And Baptist guilt is like the younger cousin of Catholic guilt.
Here, same.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I'm on the younger side, so I had some access to the internet as a teenager and was able to kind of, give myself my own sex education that I didn't have through that. But that wasn't enough. And so I turned 18 and all of a sudden I had this freedom, I had a car, I had a smartphone. And I feel like, using the marathon analogy, I sort of threw myself into sprints without any warm up or training. And then looking back on that now, as a 23-year-old, I realized that I was in many situations that weren't safe, that weren't affirming. I had my boundaries crossed, I was mistreated, and I blamed myself for it. And I also crossed other people's boundaries without realizing it at the time. And now looking back, I'm like, oh, that's what was happening. I was really not treating other people well. So now I really, especially with the pandemic, but even before the pandemic started, I just really found myself naturally losing interest in sex and feeling like this identity crisis about it. Like, oh, I thought I'm sex positive. Like, I have a lot of sex, but that doesn't necessarily have to be what it looks like. So right now, sex positivity looks like, for me, really stepping back from it and reevaluating things and spending a lot of time abstinent, just rethinking things and rethinking what I value and what it is I'm looking for.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's all I had to say for now.
Mm-hmm. JD, that brings me to a point too, because I was thinking about, this as well. Like, I was actually listening to a radio podcast today, actually, and they were talking about sex education in schools. If they should continue to teach it in schools, if they should take it out. There's a big debate about it, and it got me thinking, because kids are being introduced to sex much early on. And then probably when our parents were in school, right? So I was wondering an appropriate age that would be to start introducing or just having the conversation about sex to kids. Because like you were saying, JD, and I had a similar experience where, I didn't really hear much about sex. I had to find out about it through the internet, through friends and peers. It was taught on a very basic level in school. Parents were there was so much stigma around sexuality. It wasn't really talked about in the home. It was just one of those things we don't talk about, we don't do. And so as a teenager, you have a lot of questions, and a lot of your peers are out there experimenting, doing things. And so I was one of those kids. When I got out the house, I went wild. And, I think a part of that was because of the fact I wasn't educated, and I didn't have a safe space to ask questions, or I didn't have a community outside of my peers who are all just don't know what the fuck they're doing either. And just didn't have a real foundation. I'm wondering what do you all think a good age should be to start having this conversation about sexuality that's in a safe and beneficial way?
I think middle school, because that's like when you start figuring out puberty and things changing with your body. So once you kind of already understand the changes that are happening in your body, and you slowly start introducing the idea of like, this is nature's way of telling you should be technically ready for sex, but don't have sex now. Obviously, you're not mature or understanding, but either way, I feel like once you're starting with the puberty, it's like really gateway entry into the idea of sex, or just the idea of reproduction, or just body stuff in general. You don't have to get like explicit, because I feel like the issue is with schools and whites, even like some of my teachers that would get uncomfortable with the idea that, because they're already thinking sex in the most explicit manner, when sex could be very scientific and this is this and that is that. It doesn't need to feel awkward. It's only awkward when you make it awkward. Like I sensed it when my teachers were talking about it. I'm like, they really either one, don't know the correct language or verbiage that needs to be said, because all they have is like, you know, your street talk and your like little euphemisms here and there, but they don't have the words that are needed, you know, that are scientific, that are just matter of fact and not have euphemisms for anything else. You know, once you start adding like those little extra words to try to cover up what is what, it confuses kids.
Yeah.
Because kids understand a lot more than you think.
Yes.
They can understand adult things and adult concepts. You just have to say matter of fact. You don't add frou-frou or stuff.
That kind of reminds me. I was 11. I went to a very small grade school, and like we kind of had sex ed, and they would separate by the binary gender. Girls in one room, boys in the other, and they show us this video being like, here's the anatomy of a uterus and here's what a period is, but they wouldn't tell us anything about like bodies with penises. And so like it was kind of like half the equation. And then we go back into our homeroom, and all the boys were doing were spreading their Old Spice deodorant all over the desk. And so I think that might have been a little bit too young, because you know, we were 9-10 years old. Like, of course we're going to spread deodorant all over all over our desk. But my mom, she wasn't sure how to have the talk, because she had her own stigma with sex, and she got secondhand embarrassment. And so what she did instead, she's like, here's some how-to books. So I got a very like basic anatomical scientific explanation of how sex worked while I was 11, which I do think is a little bit too young, but I went through puberty at 11. So I was very early in my own puberty. And so she's like, here's a book with drawings and labels of how things work and what they're about. Don't have sex at prom. that was that. But I feel like I got really lucky in high school, because I went to a Catholic high school, and we had like a health class, but it did focus a lot on like sexual education. I learned how to use a condom in that class, and I learned about different contraceptions, and like it was kind of like mind-blowing, because that's not typical for Catholic schools, where they're like, hey, we know that you guys are going to have sex, and like, let's at least arm you with some information to make sure that you're not, you know, getting pregnant like half your class already has done. So here you go. All right, cool, thanks.
Okay. Anyone else?
Well, as far as sex education goes, I think that a lot of people do get so focused on the ages and stages that parents worry more about what age is appropriate to tell their kids something rather than just telling their kid the thing. I've had a couple of podcast episodes that we've kind of addressed this, and the biggest things that you really need to think about are like, how do you teach kids consent? You know, that starts at a really young age. Things like touching and not giving hugs with people they're not comfortable with. Those are really good areas to use as learning opportunities to teach them about consent and about bodies. You know, from the very beginning, using the anatomical names for body parts. That's a safety thing for kids ultimately. Kid goes to their teacher and says, my uncle touched my cookie. That doesn't hold up in court, and the teacher doesn't understand what that means. But they say, my uncle touched my vulva. You know, we've got to think about kids and protecting them in that aspect. So I think about that as a big safety thing. Plus, then it just sets them up for later. Just remember when kids finally learn the word penis and vagina in those classes? They're like, it's just all the jokes. But if they from age 3 said like, I have a penis, it's desensitized. They're not, you know, overjoyed by learning these new words. I think also talking about sexuality without shame. I mean, that can be a tough one for parents. They've got to confront a lot of their own stuff there. I think an important aspect is teaching kids about fantasy too. You know, you talked about Tantha, your mom giving you that book, which is, and you know, talking about reproduction as part of sexuality. That's often all we get when we're talking about sex education. And obviously sex is about so much more, and it's about so much more than a penis in a hole. So I think that we do need to start talking about sexuality from the relational standpoint, from fantasy standpoints, that probably, that 10, 11, 12 years old, and some things even younger, because the average age that kids are seeing porn for the first time now is 11. So that's the average age. They're seeing it between 9 and 12. Interesting kids to like things like fantasy, like books. Judy Blume, Forever. That's a great book. Or there's lots of other books out there that are for young adults, but like if they are using their mind to explore fantasy rather than turning to the internet for porn, I mean, erotica for adults is great. And there's appropriate young adult books out there that deal with things like touching, kissing, hand holding, healthy relationships and things like that. Like that's the stuff that's really core, is that healthy relationships of talking about STIs and being factual about it. You lie to kids, they'll figure it out. Don't tell them that abstinence is the only way, obviously. But yeah, I think that all that stuff is encompassed too there in sex positivity, is the talking about STIs, the understanding consent and talking about things without shame, and understanding other people's expression. I think that needs to be part of sex education for kids too. They may not have a trans family member, but they may have someone that's a teacher or a bus driver or something like that is. So getting them to understand that there's a wide variety of expressions and genders, orientations, all these things. Like, I actually have a lot of hope, because it feels like the younger generation is really getting it a lot better than we did, or even our parents are. So.
Yeah, I definitely have seen, like, I have nephews, my partner and I have nephews, and it's been fast. I've never been around, I don't have kids. I haven't been around any kids since they've been born before. And they're fascinating, because like, I have really seen that how empathetic and understanding kids are from the beginning. And it's like, they lose that like through the process of living with adults. And that's shocking, because my nephews have, 2 aunts, and that's not weird at all to them. That's not, they are saying, Aunt Emily, Aunt Stacy are kissing, they love each other, like that's not weird. And it never was. Like, it's only when people put that on there, and so, and then the only thing I wanted to mention with funny names was, my partner and her sister, like, we weren't able to say vagina either. I don't even think I knew that I had a vagina until like my 20s, I would say, like consciously felt it and thought about it. Obviously I had sex before that, or not obviously. But my partner and her sister used to call vaginas, I'm probably calling them out right now and they're like embarrassed, but they used to call them front butts.
I've heard that before, yeah.
Because they just didn't
front
know.
butts forever.
They just didn't know. They were like, I know I have a butt in the back, and I've got one in the front.
Whoa, that's confusing.
Front butts forever. Yes, please.
It's just confusing. It's like what Kristen is saying. It's confusing because they also thought like, you poop babies, and it's like, we're not doing a good job. Yeah.
We're not. There's a lot of room left out there for just factual information, in addition to teaching consent, boundaries, respect, all that stuff.
Yeah, and Stacey, with you as well. I have several nieces and nephews as well. And, these kids, they're always on these phones and these tablets, and they're all under the age of 10. And, that worries me, because how much access, to the internet. And a lot of times the parents, I don't know if they have their tablets or phones set up where it's like parental.
It should worry you. It should.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It should worry you.
Yeah. And it because they have so much access to different things. And I'm going to be honest, I first saw porn at 9. I was 9 years old. Okay. And was watching it consistently for a few years until, whatever. But, I look at myself and I'm like, listen, I didn't even have a cell phone back then. And I don't even remember. I think I just had a family computer. I know I didn't have like my own personal laptop or anything like that, but just the internet, having access to that. And if there aren't adults that are around that are monitoring those electronics, and just also, kids, they're being exposed to things much earlier. I think I was maybe 10 or 11 when we first had the reproductive class or whatever. And then in high school, we had the health class, or it might have been middle school, we had the health class. But a lot of us in that class had been exposed to sex much early on, whether through porn. And all it takes is one kid to see it, and then they spread it out. And, look at this, look at this. Yeah, look at that, look at that. Now they have cell phones. So back in the days, be like, oh, wait till your mama and daddy's not home when we go on the computer, we go on MySpace and whatever. Now they have these phones with them, and they're like, oh, look at it, look at this, look at this, and then, it just passes along. So I think they're being exposed to this much early on, which I feel like parents, then you need to get ahead of it. Like you need to really, I'm not saying you need to go ahead and just talk about, oh yes, sexuality is beautiful. And I mean, yes, sexuality is beautiful, but you don't have to be graphic. You don't have to speak of it in a way of, like encouraging. I think that's what parents are afraid of. They fear that if I talk to my kids about this, it's going to encourage them to do it. But see, they need this information.
And that's actually a fallacy. Empowering kids with factual information actually reduces their chances of doing risky behaviors. So I think that's the difference, is teaching children the facts.
Exactly.
Things like, talking about sex at the point of puberty is fine and all, but honestly, for some kids, that may be too late.
Mm-hmm.
And not that it was a consensual thing. So that's the thing. Like, I think that children having, again, age appropriate information, like there are some guides out there that are really, really helpful. Planned Parenthood, actually. And there's some other centers that have helped develop some really useful kind of guides for ages and stages. But ultimately, like, giving kids information about condoms doesn't make them go out and have more sex. Giving kids, factual information about sex, the risks, STI pregnancy information without scare tactics, especially when young men get information from their mothers, they are more likely to delay the first time they have intercourse, as well as the age at which they have their first child. So, like, the studies do show that when parents, especially, or a trusted adult give kids and teenagers factual information, they're actually less likely to go out and participate in sex and risky behaviors. That's the good news. They do actually listen. We think that they don't. They actually do.
Kids are pretty good. Kids are, I like to think kids are like good people, and that they are often pressured by either peers or other adults, or, but by school culture or whatever. Because, like, I think about, for me, I was a late bloomer for my sexuality. I didn't have sex until I was 24. And I identified as asexual for years. And everyone around me was like, well, why aren't you having sex? Oh, you haven't met the right person to stick it in you, or whatever nonsense they were coming up with. And I was just like, school is much more important right now. I don't have time for sex. I am busy trying to get a degree. 2 majors for the price of 1. Leave me alone, sort of thing. But, like, I also think of kind of, the accessibility of things like porn and just sex in general. For me, when I was a kid, I read a lot of fan fiction, because that was like a safe place for people to explore their sexuality without being judged, without feeling weird. Fanfiction.net and I have a very, like, standing relationship with one another. Hell yeah.
Fire of our own.
And, like, for me, like, I love written eroticism over, like, the visual of porn, because porn for me was just too, like, visually violent in a lot of ways. And I just like, even when I was younger, I was like, I feel like this is wrong. I feel like this isn't how this should work. And so for me, I just wasn't interested. But you get me into some smutty literature, I'm just like, yeah, this is everything I could ever want. And it just was great.
That's what's actually good for teens, because they're using their imagination to kind of draw up this scene. You think about they may be explaining what this body looks like, but their mind is still in charge of producing that body, rather than using the screen to see this photoshopped vulva and photoshopped butts and photoshopped penises, and like those all have like, the lips are shaved down so that they look more smooth. Like there's any bumps or any pubic hair, like that's taken out. Like porn's not realistic, but give young adults some erotica, and they're using their imagination. And I think there's something to be said about one of my friends who again was on my show, Dr. Lene St. John. The best advice she ever gave was, make sure they understand that there are some things you can't unsee. Kind of putting it that way, I mean, we as adults know that we've seen some shit on the internet that we wished we hadn't. And it's seared into our brains. And the first time a kid has that experience, like they're gonna be like, oh God, that's that. But I think that they I'm not saying instill fear in them, but giving them the heads up of like, hey, you start going down these rabbit holes, there's things you're not gonna be able to unsee. And there's a time and a place for some of these things, and right now it's not it. Beyond that, doing the parental controls are your next step. Like that's your thing, but you can't just rely on parental controls to be the only way that you keep kids from seeing porn. Because as you say, it just takes one friend to be like, look at this, because older brother or those parents of that friend didn't have parental controls on, or they found some new messaging app and they can work around things. Shit happens with technology, and like I already feel like I'm at the age where I don't understand it. And thank God, I honestly am happy I don't have children at this point, because I don't know how I could handle like the tech stuff. But yeah, just having the talks about porn in the sense of it's not realistic, there's things you can't unsee, and supplement it with fantasy in some other way that's not visual. It's a good way for kids to learn about that stuff.
Yeah. And, to shift gears a little bit, I was really pondering about how one embracing their sexuality can be a process of healing. It could be a tool for healing. And I know from my journey, my own personal trauma, wounds, a lot of that healing occurred to me releasing stigma, releasing negativity, releasing all of these things that I had been unlearning what I had been learned, basically, and saying and reclaiming my power, basically, through my sexuality, and especially through solo sexuality, and just being comfortable in my skin, saying that my pleasure matters. It's my right. It counts. And so I came across this film just out of the blue. It was a recommendation for me on Netflix. It's called Strip Down and Rise Up, or Strip Down, Rise Up. And I encourage you all to view this film if you get it, if you have a second or a chance. And this film is about a person who opens up this pole dancing class. And she's teaching many women, and there's one man in the class, and teaching them about their sexuality, about reclaiming their power and moving their bodies. And through all of this movement, through this class, they are healing. They're releasing their traumas. They're bonding with each other and talking about what's held them back. And through their bodies and embracing their sexuality, they are releasing and healing and working through so much stuff. And I just thought that film was just really amazing to see how something that, it's pole dancing. People say, oh, you're training strippers. But it was a therapeutic experience for these folks that was involved in that class. I encourage you all to view that film. It's on Netflix. It's called Strip Down, Rise Up. And it just it really is a great film. And that film really got me thinking about how me embracing my sexuality has healed me in so many different ways. I've taken back my power, and you all can take back your power too, especially with those who have experienced sexual trauma. I think there's a place for, you know, when you get to a point, you say, I'm going to take back my power, you know.
I think
Sorry for me to ramble.
I think people underestimate the power that a lot of sex workers have with their knowledge within sex positivity and just sex in general. Because since they're working one-on-one with sex every day, that is their profession, just like with Kristen. They have their own intimate view on it, but they also have their unique view, ones that like have a lot of like different experiences with different people, and then they can impart their wisdom onto others. Like there's so many sex worker artists that I follow on Instagram that sometimes they post like little nuggets of information. I'm like, whoa, I never thought about that in regards to sex. And you know, they'll talk about an experience with a client that they were having issues with their sexuality, and they seeked out they sought out a sex worker, and they helped them explore themselves and then guided them through sex. I like people have that stigma of like, oh, if I seek out a sex worker, it's that I'm a bad person and stuff like that. But sex work was like, I would like to think that it was like pre-therapy, before therapy was a thing. So sex workers are like the underpaid therapist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I used to be a phone sex operator at one point, and like sometimes some of these clients would really be just talking about their lives with me, and then they would want to get off. But after they got off, they're like, you know, you're really nice. You have a nice voice. Can I like tell you about some stuff that happened to me today? And like, I just need someone to unpack it with. And I'm like, I mean, you're the one paying for it. Let's go. Yes, sir. Tell me what's going on.
I did phone sex operator work for one summer when I first started this business to just try to, I'm very experiential with some things. I just want to like try it out. And I wanted to sort of learn more about people's kinks and what they like. And also just sort of test myself and see like, can I make it through this really intense like thing they're going to tell me without giggling or, you know, judging them. And I tell you, the best calls that I had were ones where we just talked. A lot of those people call phone sex operators just to talk because it is cheaper than therapy. But yeah, not only are there lessons to be learned from sex workers, but you know, back to what you were saying, Nita, I think, you know, what you're addressing right there, a lot of it is about permission. When you really focus on yourself again and embrace your pleasure, you're giving yourself permission for those things that you enjoy. And when you give yourself permission for things, it's a little easier to give other people permission for those things. You know, I think about when we talk about bodies and whether a body is swimsuit ready, you know, all bodies are swimsuit ready because you have a body. And but when we are critical of ourselves and how we look in a swimsuit, if we are smaller bodied, or we are not giving, since we're not giving ourselves permission, we are therefore also not giving other people who don't look like us permission to be in that. So like, that's the place that we have to hold for ourselves is that permissive piece, because permission for us gives permission to others too. And we don't realize that we're withholding that when we don't allow ourselves those things. We're judging ourselves and therefore we're judging others in that. So I think that's all tied together. The more we give ourselves that openness, you can allow that space for other people.
Definitely. The more permit, and that's perfect. You hit it on the head. The more permission I've given myself, the more pleasure I've experienced in it, you know, and of course it makes sense why, you know, and I've even in my own personal practices have found when I just give myself permission to just feel however it is I want to feel, when I, you know, even if it's just like, you know what, I want to feel pleasure tonight or today or whatever. I use my mind and I give myself permission to do so. I don't need all this extra stuff, stimulation. You know, I allow my body to work as it naturally works. And I just, you know, that was a big key, a big changer for me, because I realized I hadn't been giving myself permission. You know, I was doing a lot of things out of what I thought was expected of me, or peer pressure, what I thought I should be doing. And none of it felt right. But when I really embraced myself and my body, and I feel like this episode really ties in with our body positivity episode that we did a couple months back. Because through my embracing my sexuality, I embraced my body. And so that's beautiful. Give yourself permission. Kristen told you, give yourself permission.
There's a lot of. Oh, sorry, Stacey. Go ahead.
It's not easy to do, and especially this whole like pleasure principle thing really hits home for me, because I grew up, in a family that was just kind of like responsibility, do your work, shut up, and like, I mean, maybe not shut up, kind of, if my parents are watching, but like, life is to work and to take care of your responsibilities and to stay in line, and to like, my parents are like the American dream come true. And so for me, I was a competitive athlete, and I just ignored being a human being and having a body, and like, even though I was doing things with my body, playing a sport, I totally turned off any valve of like feeling in myself and having feelings and I just didn't think that pleasure was something that you were supposed to experience as a human. And that totally, I started having sex, and I was turned into an alcoholic, and I never had sex sober until I got sober, like when I was in my 20s. And I never experienced pleasure in sex until I was in like into a committed relationship after all of my sexual past, and like, I think that's huge. And I just, we say these things and they're so simple and they hit right on the head, but I've really seen like and felt that is so difficult to work through on yourself. It really is kind of a final frontier of like self-love and self-work and like, excavation, like it. And I don't think it ever is like, woo, checked that off the list. Like, I think it is a continual process.
I think you're right. Yeah, absolutely. It's not an easy process. It's a worthwhile process, but it's not fast. It's not easy. It's not a straight line either. I describe it as sort of like riding on the mamba. You're just, until you get there. But yeah, you're correct. It's not the easiest thing. You just got to start and work through it as you can, and just know that again, it's worthwhile through that process.
I think it requires a lot of empathy. Like sex positivity is, at the end of the day, empathy. It's empathy for other people. It's empathy for yourself. It's allowing yourself the grace to take it slow, to sit back, to enjoy the ride, to experience pleasure in all things, not just, physical pleasure, but with food and drink and just creating something, even if it's a stick figure and you're like, oh, this isn't art. You made something. That's amazing, and you're making something with yourself or with other people, especially when like sex and sexuality is involved. And for me, like, since I've been going, we've talked a lot about our own personal healing journeys, like just stepping back and allowing myself, some grace and empathy and saying, it's okay to be where I'm at and to meet myself where I presently am, has really helped me discover the joy of living. Like, we're not just surviving anymore. We're living and feeling pleasure in that. And I think that's so amazing.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Tanith, go off. Living, that's what it's about. Because when you are embracing all of this and you are living, you are feeling. And when you feel, that lets you know that you are alive. Okay? Yeah. I'm with it. I love that. I love that so much. Okay. So, okay, y'all, this is hot dish. Okay, now I need y'all to dish that dish for me. Okay, give me some of your turn-ons. Come on, give them to me. Spit them out. Don't all be quiet at once.
I'll go first.
It's like, I know you told us to prep for this, and I'm like blanking. I'm like, I had a list, and then I just gone.
Oh, for me, let's see. The kissing on the neck. Like, I love a good makeout session. Makeout session just get me started. Like,
you're a bad kisser. We'll work on it.
We'll work on it.
We'll work on it. You can be trained.
Our sexual response cycle for not to stay in the binary, but men and women often is like switched in the beginning, where some are very reactive and some are very proactive. Well, I tend to be very reactive. So sometimes I just need that, like, I wasn't really thinking about it, but now you kissed me like that. Hell yeah, I'm thinking about it. And the smell sometimes of somebody.
Yeah.
Smells will get me.
I'm not I like appearance and like physical
all
stuff
of that.
is not like the way someone talks, the energy that they have, you know, that's where it comes from for me.
A turn on for me is someone wearing a 3-piece suit.
No, you took mine. I know. This is over. This is over. Cameraman, you can go home.
Gotta go. We're done. You're getting 9 minutes of your time back. We gotta go. Thank you. Good night. But seriously, like, just like if you take that extra mile of like dressing up, like,
yes,
like, let me rip your clothes off, please.
Took that extra effort. Let me take extra effort taking it off of you.
Like, let me pull you by your lapel down to my lips.
Yes.
Let me eat you until there's nothing left.
Fingers off.
God, like, and you know, it's just like, I hate that that's a treat. You know, I don't want dress up to be a treat. I just want that to be the meal. I don't want it to be dessert.
Yeah.
I want it to be my main course. Like, that's the appetizer, you know? Like, I don't want to see people dressed in cargo shorts. Like, okay, great. I know you can carry a lot of stuff. That's a wonderful thing. Great. You're not a pack mule. Like,
people do the bare minimum of dressing nice on just a casual date. You're like, damn, you like me like that?
Yes.
Bars on the ground.
I didn't know.
And Tana, to go a little step further, for me though, I love women in suits.
Yes.
I love it when they do like the feminine features. So they'll have the heel with the suit or a nice blazer. I'm like, love.
I know you're watching. I know you're watching Killing Eve episodes on rerun, Anita.
Yes. I saw a picture of Aubrey Plaza the other day in the suit.
Yes.
And I was like, take me now. Pennies came all the way off. Okay. I'm sorry. Okay. I'm sorry. Okay. You shouldn't have said suits. We would have been okay, but you said suits and it took me back.
You know, I think it's a very relatable turn on.
Yes. I love that.
Very relatable turn on, you know?
Oh my God.
Like,
I love it.
What is JD's opinion on suits?
Yeah, suits. Yes, JD, where are you?
Oh, I do like suits, I guess. I do have a collection of nice blazers. I don't normally wear those on a date, but maybe I'll start doing that.
Yeah, you should wear it on the hot dish sometime, okay?
What's it for you then, JD?
I feel like me and JD are kind of on the same page, maybe, but I'm just sensing that with not so much the physical features until you are in the act, and then yes, but like the turn on and the alluring and the lust and everything. JD, am I wrong?
I can be turned on by physical features for sure. It used to be more of that for me, but now I'm more like personality based. Like, if you say something that hits me the wrong way, like, that's a real turn off. for me. So if people like put up red flags about certain things, like that can ruin a night for me now. Whereas before it didn't really matter before for me, but now it really does. But I kind of like that now that I'm a little more picky. Other turn-ons.
We've all fucked Republicans. It's okay. Stop that.
Let's not talk about it.
Yeah, I'm more picky.
No, we've all had our moments, I'm sure, in life where like our standards, we look back and we're like, what was I thinking?
Oh, man.
Let's
not go there.
The learning about that it's about more than just what's in their pants, how they look, because we've still got to, face them at the end of it, or maybe look at them the next day or the day after that. But yeah, I think for a lot of us, I think as we age, it is less about what some might view as like superficial things. And being sapiosexual or demisexual even is a thing. So some people just don't discover that about themselves, that some people just don't have a sexual attraction until there's an attraction to someone's mind first.
That's me. I guess that's me. What's that called? What is that one called again?
Sapiosexual.
Okay. I'm going to start saying that now.
Or demisexual too, because that's like you have to have an emotional connection first.
Yeah.
Where you're like, okay, I like this person. Let's get down.
Okay.
Like you have to really like them first. It's not just like a puppy love sort of thing. It's you're committed to them.
And I think that often describes people who say like, I didn't really like them at first, but they totally grew on me. Not necessarily the people that wear them down, but I mean those people who are like, wow, I've known you for years and now I'm looking at you in a totally different light because like things have just built up for them, and then suddenly they wake up and go like, oh wow, I love this person. I think that's often like a demisexual person or a sapiosexual person.
The reason why my partner and I are together is because we both did not like each other, or there was just like no, I was very confused by her and really didn't know if I liked her even as a person or not. And that was like, so I just had to keep seeing her because of that. And then,
it was the intrigue, right? Like, I don't really understand what's going on here, but
yeah, I can figure out a body like immediately, but like people, how people work, it's, I don't know. That's what.
But yeah, I'm with you on that too, though, because I really love a person's mind. I love a person that's passionate. That is a big turn on for me. If someone's just talking like they're talking about their goals or their dreams or just something they're really passionate about, like that is a big turn on for me. I love that. I tell people all the time, like, I love a person with a good mind, like a good head on their shoulders. Like they're just really about evolving and just being the best person they can be. Just a good person, God damn it. I love a good person, with a good mind, a good heart, a good soul. and they look good in suits. That's all I'm saying. I was
gonna say I was going pure like physical turn on with that one. I was like, suits.
That hit
suits
me in my
core.
You're gonna go back on your dating site and being like, interests. Women in suits.
Yes.
Good person.
Love life. Live, laugh, love.
Not put that on your dating profile.
Oh, man. Oh, well, let me change mine then real quick.
Oh, fuck's sakes.
Not
again.
Play hard.
I don't know. I got daddy for daddy on mine, so maybe that will work for you too, Nita.
Oh, daddy. I'm daddy with an I, okay? I'm a baby daddy. Baby daddy. I just realized what I said.
Pun. Genius.
Oh, I'm a mess right now. You got me thinking about Aubrey Plaza and that suit that I saw her in. Now I'm on 10.
Like I know what I'm doing later.
Okay, listen, don't you judge me. Don't call me after we end this, okay? I'm busy.
Don't at me, please.
Yes. Well, we're pushing to an hour a minute now. We got to wrap all this up. It's been a pleasure, talking with you guys. Now, for any last remarks, does anybody have any advice they would like to give to our viewers that's on this sex positivity journey?
Take your time. Because
Take
life's
your time.
too short for bad sex. Come on. We're done.
Yes.
Life's too short to not be into kink.
Another episode coming soon, right?
Segue, right? Isn't that our plan for next month to do a kink positivity?
There it is.
Well, and I say in your pursuit of trying to be sex positive, think about this phrase: don't yuck my yum. I like what I like. You like what you like. And just because you don't like what I like doesn't mean we've got to yuck each other's yums. Just be okay with what I'm okay with, because what I do is consensual and what you do is consensual, and we're all good here.
That's it. I like that. You got to trademark that. Put it on t-shirts.
I've heard it from other sexologists, but it's a great one, right?
Okay.
Don't yuck my yum.
That's it. That is it. All right. Anyone else? Is that it for advice? Closing remarks? All right. Well, Kristen, we thank you so much for joining us on this dialogue about sex positivity. You were a joy. We all appreciate you. Let the people know where they can find out more information about you. They need you.
Thank you. And thank you so much. This really was a great conversation. I haven't gotten to be on a panel like this in a while. So this was very, very refreshing. Thank you to you all. My company name is Open the Doors Coaching. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. It's Open the Doors KC on those last two. You can even find me on TikTok at Coach Kristen for sex advice. I also have a podcast. It's called Keep Them Coming with Open the Doors Coaching, spelled normally to get around the censors, but you can find it anywhere that you listen to podcasts, or find me on my website, openthedoorscoaching.com.
All right. Thank you so much, Kristen. Now, does anyone else have any projects coming up? Any plugs you guys want to put out there? No?
We've got the next episode coming up next month.
Yeah, we got JD is we do 2 virtual events a month, Hot Dish and our Artist Spotlight. So Hot Dish is this time at the end of the month on Thursday every month. And then JD will be taking over the Artist Spotlight next month as we kind of talk about some choral music and their role in that. So,
All right.
Very cool.
Well, viewers, we thank you so much for tuning in. We know it was about 5.1 million of you guys that tuned in. We appreciate the support. This has been another episode from the Hot Dish, or I guess I should say from No Divide KC. Whoop, whoop. All right, everybody have a wonderful night. Go pleasure yourself and give yourself permission, or don't. It's up to you, really. It's your choice.
What you like or not to.
Yes.
It's
And go.
NDKC.
Yes. Bye. Bye. Good night.
You know you wanna listen in. You wanna know the latest spin. It's a little swish swish with NDKC Hot Dish. NDKC Hot Dish.